Listening, fill in the blanks.
Let's start.
All this still doesn't answer the question of why we laugh at all. One idea is that all this still doesn't answer the question of why we laugh at all. One idea is that laughter and tickling originated as a way of sealing the relationship between mother and child. Another is that the reflex response to tickling is protective, alerting us to the presence of crawling creatures that might harm us or compelling us to defend the parts of our bodies that are most vulnerable in hand-to-hand combat. But the idea that has gained the most popularity in recent years is that laughter in response to tickling is a way for two individuals to signal and test their trust in one another. This hypothesis starts from the observation that although a little tickle can be enjoyable,
people have varying capacities for tasting bitterness, and the differences appear to be genetic. About 75% of people are sensitive to the taste of the bitter compounds phenylthiocarbamide and 6N-propylthyrosyl, and 25% are insensitive. Those who are sensitive to phenylthiocarbamide seem to be less likely than others to eat cruciferous vegetables. According to Stephen Wooding, a geneticist at the University of Utah, some people, known as supertasters, are especially sensitive to 6N-propylthyrosyl because they have an unusually high number of taste buds. Supertasters tend to shun all kinds of bitter-tasting things, including vegetable, coffee, and dark chocolate. Perhaps as a result, they tend to be thin. They're also less fond of alcoholic drinks, which are often slightly bitter.
The genetic theory is also undermined by results from Peter Hepper and his team at Queen's University in Belfast, Ireland. In 2000, the psychologists used ultrasound to show that by the 15th week of pregnancy, fetuses already have a preference as to which thumb they suck. In most cases, the preference continued after birth. At 15 weeks, though, the brain does not yet have control over the body's limbs. Hepper speculates that fetuses tend to prefer whichever side of the body is developing quicker, and that their movements, in turn, influence the brain's development. Whether this early preference is temporary or holds up throughout development and infancy is unknown. Genetic predetermination is also contradicted by the widespread observation that children do not settle on either their right or left hand until they are 2 or 3 years old.
Identify the causes. Jan Elsner, Melbourne psychologist who specializes in executive coaching, says thriving on a demanding workload is typical of senior executives and other high-potential business people. She says there is no one-size-fits-all approach to stress. Some people work best with high adrenaline periods followed by quieter patches, while others thrive under sustained pressure. We could take urine and blood hormonal measures and pass judgment of whether someone's physiologically stressed or not, she says. But that's not going to give us an indicator of what their experience of stress is and what the emotional and cognitive impacts of stress are going to be.
The problem arises not only from the scale and variety of the archaeological remains, but also from two other sources: the very varied natural and human threats to the resource, and the complex web of organizations with authority over, or interests in, the coastal zone. Human threats include the redevelopment of historic towns and old dockland areas, and the increased importance of the coast for the leisure and tourism industries, resulting in pressure for the increased provision of facilities such as marinas. The larger size of ferries has also caused an increase in the damage caused by their wash to fragile deposits in the intertidal zone. The most significant natural threat is the predicted rise in sea level over the next century, especially in the south and east of England.
Some educators and parents are suspicious of mother tongue-based teaching programs because they worry that they take time away from the majority language. For example, in a bilingual program where 50% of the time is spent teaching through children's home language and 50% through the majority language, surely children won't progress as far in the letter? One of the most strongly established findings of educational research, however, is that well implemented bilingual programs can promote literacy and subject matter knowledge in a minority language without any negative effects on children's development in the majority language. Within Europe, the Foyer program in Belgium, which develops children's speaking and literacy abilities in 3 languages, their mother tongue, Dutch and French, most clearly illustrates the benefits of bilingual and trilingual education. See Cummins, 2000.
The repeating cycle of sand inching up the windward side to the dune crest, then slipping down the dune slip face allows the dune to inch forward, migrating in the direction the wind blows. As you might guess, all of this climbing then slipping leaves its mark on the internal structure of the dune. The image on the right shows fossil sand dune structure preserved in the Merced Formation at Fort Funston, Golden Gate National Recreation Area. The sloping lines, or laminations you see, are the preserved slip faces of a migrating sand dune. This structure is called cross-bedding and can be the result of either wind or water currents. The larger the cross-bedded structure, however, the more likely it is to be formed by wind rather than water.
This is primarily achieved today through cavity wall insulation. Insulating bricks are built in 2 separate leaves, as they are cailled in the trade. The gap between the inner and outer leaves of brickwork depends on the type of insulation used, but there should be enough space for a gap of 20 mm between the insulating material in the cavity and the 2 leaves on either side. The air in these gaps is an efficient insulator by itself. Cavity walls have IELTS replaced solid walls because they are more resistant to rain penetration. Because 2 leaves are necessary, a strong brick manufacturing industry is essential, so that enough good quality insulating bricks are plentifully available.
Activists in other countries say they too want the United States to play a more leading role on the noise issue. But as in other areas of environmental health, merely having a more powerful government agency in place that can set more regulations is not the ultimate answer, according to other experts. Bronzeth stresses that governments worldwide need to increase funding for noise research and do a better job coordinating their noise pollution efforts so they can establish health and environmental policies based on solid scientific research. Governments have a responsibility to protect their citizens by curbing noise pollution, she says.
Meanwhile, throughout the period since it spread northwards after the last glaciation, the sustained growth of oak in Britain demonstrates that the wildwood was not as continual as once believed. Oak is a pioneer species, which requires vacant space to generate more of itself. Grazing animals are also present to keep areas open, so oak regenerates in the thorny brush as a protective measure from their grazing. Archaeological evidence indicates that red deer, who graze on grass as well as browse from trees, were essential to the economy in Mesolithic Britain, with people utilizing them for meat, skins, antlers, and bones.
Like, share, subscribe the channel, and press the bell icon for further updates.